What's up, everybody? And now let's get into episode 7 of Helstrom. Now, this episode is entitled Scars. And, this episode, I will say, is probably the most complex of all the episodes I've watched thus far. There's just a lot going on here between the dialogues, between just chemistry between characters, a lot of backstories. And it's just a lot, to be honest. And one other thing I'll say is that I'm not totally familiar with the comics, but I did research it some to kind of get familiar with this upon reviewing it. And there is some pointers to the comics even within this episode. And I will say that, this episode I truly feel is the first step of us getting that version of the comics of Daimon in this series. I think we're starting to see him move a little forward with, the version of the comics that many of y'all may be familiar with now moving forward in this series. I think we're starting to see that come to fruition. So it's very interesting. But anyway, let's read the synopsis really quick and then I'm going to break down this episode. So a powerful demon looking for a new host and Anna's struggling to control her darker urges. Daimon is offered a proposition from the Bloods. Caretaker finds himself in hot water, and Dr. Hastings rattled Daimon with new revelations about his past. So, as we know from the last episode, Caretaker has been missing. He hasn't been answering his calls, and quite frankly, everybody's been hitting him up because one of the attack on the hospital, and two because of what happened at the Blood hotel, and they're like, hey, answer for your folks. We need to know what's happening. Plus, we can use your help at the hospital. So they're, obviously they're trying to find out his whereabouts in this episode. But before all that goes along, we go back 20 years as we see a young Dr. Hastings and a young Caretaker as they are observing Anna behind a double mirror. And Anna, who's just going through all this trauma as a kid, being kidnapped by her dad going off being a murderer, leaving her by herself, and then she's rescued, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second. And they're just talking about what they're going to do with her. I mean, Daimon, and the mom have already been brought in. Daimon committed his mom to the mental institution. And so, he's been taken under care by Dr. Hastings. And he's doing good as far as his recovery mentally with everything that's going on. But they now bring in Anna, who isn't doing good. And they figure it's not really wise to put them back together because one, a lot of people, including the Blood, is looking for Anna, and putting them together puts them both at danger. And it also doesn't really help as far as the healing process between the two of them. And not to mention Anna, no one can really get through to her. She's really struggling. She's really out of control with her powers, and it's just quite frankly dangerous. But Caretaker steps up to do the job. So now we know why the two of them were separate as far as care, and why they were never brought together, and why they haven't seen each other in so long, because it's just dangerous as far as them being targeted. It's dangerous as far as them controlling their powers, and it just wasn't good for anybody, honestly. So that's what happened with that. But yeah, now we see the aftermath of the hospital and the siblings who, the Helstrom siblings, they think they defeated their dad and they didn't. So now they're back to the drawing board and they cannot get along, but that's no surprise for anyone here because Daimon obviously priority is looking for mom, protecting mom. Anna is like, hey, I need to kill dad. I thought I killed dad, so now I'm pissed because I didn't kill dad. She's just obsessed with killing dad. And that's just bringing so much conflict between the two of them because, quite frankly, Anna doesn't care about mom, or Victoria, as she says. She doesn't even claim her as mom anymore. Since mom is gone, it's Victoria, who's obviously housing a demon. And so she does not care anything about mom, who's soon to be gone, as the body cannot really tolerate that demon's possession much longer, and the demon's already threatened to kill her. So, Anna's is completely out of it on that note. And then Daimon, he's just like, he's at foes with her because he's just like, we should be trying to protect her, and they hash out. Well, I'll say they really try to hash out a lot of the differences from in their past, the differences now as far as strategy. And Anna's is over it, and she says, "Look, I'm done. You don't agree with me, and all this other stuff." So she just walks away from it, and she says, "You handle it." That makes Anna goes back. She goes back to Christian. She goes back to saying business as usual. You know, business as usual means that targeting criminals and her taking justice into her own hand. At the same time, too, going back to Caretaker. Now, Caretaker we now see has been kidnapped for questioning by the Blood, questioning of his allegiance. And so, you know, they bring him in, and now we get to see the head, and, you know, it's kind of what their intentions with him, which is really the big part that, you know, this is the part that I would want to put a lot of emphasis on. You really need to pay attention here, because there's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of things that wants to happen. There's a lot of things being said with them, and you kind of get you kind of put into perspective like why the Blood has been around for as long as it has, and you know, how do they, you know, contend in this war against the possessed and the demons and so on. Not to mention Hastings, you know, has overly been concerned for Caretaker. So, you know, she even goes to the church, and she's just like, hey, I need you to make some connections, call your people, and figure out where he's at. You know, not only because I care and I'm missing, you know, we're missing him because we need to know where he's at. But at the same time, there's a demon on the loose, and they should be, you know, they should have the heads up that, you know, it's a powerful demon, and, you know, he could be knocking on their doorsteps at any moment. At the same time, we get a very interesting conversation about Gabriella, who the church is a little bit worrisome with her. They're saying they have concerns about the trajectory of her learnings and where she may ultimately end. So they're not so fond on Miss Goody Two Shoes, as they say earlier in the series, about ultimately what she's trying to accomplish and what she may. And not to mention, we get more of Gabriella's backstory, which is, you know, really starting to bring it to light, this character and why she operates in the way she does. It's because, like, we're seeing some changes within her character within the last few episodes, and now we're starting to see a little bit more why she really banks on herself, and she doesn't really try to say so marginalized in regards to teaching and just, you know, handling situations. So it's very interesting. But again, you know, this episode, it really dealt with Anna, and because she walked away, she had conflict with Chris, she had conflict with Daimon. She's just, no one's getting along with her, and it isolates her, and she's struggling with going down that dark path that she went down when she was a kid. And you just see her really be conflicted by it. You seeing like how the darkness could easily take over her, and you see her struggling to just want to do the right thing. And not to mention, we learned a really dark secret and the truth about her childhood that really brings a lot of her issues to light. And everything she's been going through. It is super duper important to the arc of this character, what happens in this episode with Anna, because I guess I had no clue that this was how it was going to happen and what happened with this event that I'm talking about. And it was a complete shocker to me. And it wasn't a shocker because it was like a big, like, explosion scene or something. It was just like a wow, like, okay. Now I'm starting to see the psychology behind her and why she feels the way she does, and just, you know, just the trauma. I can't put emphasis enough. The trauma that she's been through and why she's just still battling it. And then lastly, with this episode, we get to see Daimon just get completely unleashed. He sees a relic from his childhood that's been revealed to him, and he's just not happy at all. Again, trauma, going back to things with their childhood, and he just goes haywire. So like I said, we're starting to see the Daimon of the comic, shall I say, slowly manifest into the show. So overall, a good episode. This is really deep. This is one that you probably want to make sure you pay close attention to if you don't watch twice, because there's a lot of important information. I skimmed over so much for you all. You have no clue, to try to keep it super enjoyable for you all. But this is one of those episodes that I say definitely pay attention, because there's definitely a lot to come out of this episode. But yes, stay tuned, because episode 8 review is coming to you next, folks. So see you there.
All I really want is that big old belt. Big that bitch.